Too often, they say they haven't had anywhere to turn. So News Channel 13's Matt McFarland reports a new center has opened to give ex-cons some direction down the right path this time.
David Howard knows a thing or two about transitioning from life behind these prison bars to getting one's life together back on the streets.
Without reentry programs, it'll be just like guys coming out, going right back to the block, to the corner to do the things that they used to do prior to their incarceration.
Howard is an example and a success when it comes to reentry programs. The 57-year-old served 16 years in prison for everything from armed robbery to selling drugs.
Since I've been here, I've been drug-free, crime-free, and I've been employable.
He moved up to Albany 17 years ago. Now he's helping young men who find themselves in the shoes he once wore, out of prison and not knowing where to go. The Center for Law and Justice held its grand opening for its reentry center on South Pearl Street. Already the center says it's seen about 20 ex-offenders looking for help.
They come back out into a world that they do not know. They do not know where to go to get help and assistance.
Alice Green named the reentry center after her nephew, Jeffrey Wood. Wood spent time in jail before passing away this February. Green says the center will help recently released inmates get back on their feet, helping them find jobs, housing, education, and health care. With the reform of the Rockefeller drug laws, Green says the need will be greater now more than ever.
But we don't want to treat them as statistics. We want to treat the whole person. That whole person has a lot of needs when they come back.
David Howard knows it firsthand. That's why he says he'll be there to lend one to those who need it.
Being able to be in a position to give back and to reach out and to try to help and to let people know that reentry is something that's positive and is conducive to change.
Alice Green says the reentry center will be working with prisons and jails so those inmates will know where they can go to help find those services before they are released. In Colony, Matt McFarland, News Channel 13 Today.
Cream Moore. That tops your news in a minute. The meeting comes more than a week after Moore was shot and killed by Albany police on South Pearl Street. Police say Moore pulled out a gun before he was shot. The investigation into Moore's death continues as the Albany County DA's office is conducting their own investigation. Albany community leaders are discussing the shooting death of 19-year-old Cream Moore. Moore was killed on December 29th on South Pearl Street after being shot by police. His death has fractured the relations between the police department and the community, but leaders say it's time to give the department a chance to carry out its investigation. Activist Alice Green led a press conference at the Center for Law and Justice in Albany. She and others say while they're disturbed by Moore's death, they're also worried about losing ground that the community has made with the police department under the leadership of Chief Stephen Krokoff. Tension spilled over last week when Krokoff held a press conference with residents and witnesses challenging the police account that Moore drew a gun on officers during that traffic stop. Leaders are now concerned efforts will be set back or even lost if the relationship between police and the community continues to suffer as a result of this shooting.
The thing that we are most impressed by is his understanding of the philosophy of community policing and his willingness to put it into effect in the Albany Police Department so that we can all work with him, develop a partnership, get rid of this mistrust that exists between the community and the police department.
Green and other leaders do say they want an investigation, but they trust the department and the DA to do their jobs. Other leaders want an independent investigation. Albany Mayor Jerry Jennings and District Attorney David Soares speak out about the ongoing investigation into the Cream Moore case.
For community policing.
We can't afford to go backwards. If we do, Cream Moore's death will have been in vain.
Dr. Alice Green with the Center for Law and Justice says the Albany Police Department has made great strides in community policing. Changes she hopes aren't lost in the wake of last week's police shooting of 19-year-old Cream Moore. At a news conference this morning, she addressed the public's demands for an independent investigation.
Given the growth and the change that I see, I expect that the police department and the district attorney's office can carry out satisfactory investigations of this matter.
Green says then the community can decide if an outside agency needs to step in. In the meantime, she's calling for patience.
The other alternative is to throw it all out and go back to the oppressive, and I mean oppressive, administrations that I've had to deal with in 30 years. I don't want to go back that way.
Despite the chaos that ensued, Green says last week's news conference shows Chief Stephen Krokoff is pushing for transparency. Vivian Carnegie, whose own son was the victim of gun violence, says that public outcry should happen with every shooting, not just at the hands of police.
It's not frustrating that it comes now. It should. But I am frustrated that it doesn't come with every act of violence. It needs to come each and every time one of our children is lost.
Now, the investigations into the shooting by both the DA's office and the police department are still ongoing. A spokesperson for the department tells us there's no timeline as to when they will wrap up, but we are told that as much information will be made public as possible. Once that happens, the case will then go before a grand jury. For now, we're live in Albany. Kate McVeigh, Fox 23 News.
The criminal justice system that's failing many men and women of color. She spoke at Hackett Elementary School about injustice and the need for a second chance.
Our community is in crisis because an increasing number of them in our community are convicted, which means that they cannot in any way join society. Those barriers are still there.
According to Green, people of color represent 60% of those in prison, and these numbers have been growing. Green told me she'll be starting a campaign to end what she calls a mass incarceration, a movement like that of Dr. King's to bring a community together.
We want everyone involved.
Chris Gloninger, CBS 6 News.
To affect the lives of young people. And that's what I'm hoping this discussion will move towards.
Source also showed us the gun that was presented to the grand jury. And Dave Rossi says it's a .22 revolver. He says it is operable and says Moore had it loaded with one hollow point bullet. The DA...
Carolyn McLaughlin says she hopes this can be a starting point for the community and the police department that may lead to something positive in the end.
Nobody's winning in this situation. The facts are what they are as the investigation unfolded. And I just believe that we have to think positively. As I said, let Nakreem's death not be in vain.
Police Chief Stephen Krokoff put out a statement this afternoon saying that the grand jury investigation reached the same conclusions as an internal department probe that found that Officer Mulligan's actions were justified and saved his partner's life as well as his own. Krokoff went on to say that this highlights the challenges his officers face daily, and he hopes it will spur more citizens to join community members working to rid the city of senseless violence. To that end, Alice Green and other members of the community are planning a community meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the Dream Center on Warren Street in the South End to start to begin that dialogue. We've got more coming up on this for tonight. My colleague Catherine Underwood is following developments as well. She'll have more for you coming up on Fox 23 News at 10 and 11. But for now, live in Albany, Walt McClure, Fox 23 News.
Pearl Street after being shot by officers. Albany Police Chief Stephen Krokoff says he hopes the findings will encourage community members to help stop senseless violence.
Pocket. Officer Mulligan states that it's at this point that he sees Nakreem remove a revolver with his left hand from his left jacket pocket, and he immediately lunges for Nakreem's left arm while yelling gun. He's grabbing his left arm in an attempt to grab the gun. It's at this point that they go off camera and fall to the ground.
It's after that the DA maintains that the 3 fatal shots were fired into Nakreem Moore's chest. All this occurred in a span of 16 seconds. A .22 revolver was recovered at the scene on the sidewalk next to Moore's body.
There was an effort there to apprehend Mr. Moore without the use of deadly physical force. And when there were no other alternatives, it was at that point in time that Mr. Moore had, in fact, that when Officer Mulligan decided that the use of deadly physical force was appropriate.
Late today, Albany Police Chief Steve Krokoff sent out a release saying that Officer Mulligan, the one who fired the shots, acted heroically, and he likely saved the life of his partner, Officer Kelly.
Challenges our officers face every day. It is my hope that this tragic incident will spur more citizens to join the responsible members of our community who are working with us to rid our city of senseless violence.
Was involved in a home invasion. I prefer to talk about what happened to Nakreem Moore that he viewed life as this is the only option that he has. And those are the kind of discussions that I think needs to be had with the community.
Moore's death certainly sparked outrage among people in the community. That was clearly evident at a police news conference after the shooting. Tensions exploded at the presser that turned chaotic quickly. Many were skeptical of the police's version of events.
I certainly think that some people were prepared. However, there's been a lot of misinformation that has been put out there ever since the shooting occurred, and some people have bought into it and others haven't. So that's a concern.
And some say while relations have improved, there's a long way to go to bridge the gap between the police and the community.
One of the reasons we're having this press conference talking about this issue right now is because what we're looking for is peace in the community.
And Alice Green says she'll hold a community meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the Dream Center in Albany's South End. They'll give people information and answer any questions that they may have. So clearly, this is just the beginning in a series of conversations that need to be had.
Certainly, and one that DA David Soares says that he is willing to have, and it should happen. Thanks for that, Aaron. That's our Aaron Connolly reporting for us in downtown Albany. Meanwhile, Albany Police Chief Stephen Krokoff released a statement saying, quote, "We support the findings of this independent investigation. The results of our internal investigation confirm these findings and indicate that the heroic actions of Officer Mulligan likely saved the life of his partner, Officer Kelly. These events highlight the challenges our officers face each and every day. It is my hope that this tragic incident will spur more citizens to join the responsible members of our community who are working with us to rid our city of senseless violence."
Officer John Kelly on the right. Nakreem Moore, while exiting a stopped Range Rover, pulls a loaded .22 caliber revolver from his left-hand jacket pocket. Mulligan shouts, "Gun!" Kelly wrestles him to the ground. Mulligan shoots Moore 3 times.
We have a very accurate picture of what transpired on that evening. It does conclude this investigation, but it certainly does not conclude the conversation.
The investigation is over because the grand jury felt the police officers did nothing wrong.
It seems fairly clear that the police acted in a way that they thought was appropriate.
Here in Albany's South End, it was difficult to find anyone who agrees with the grand jury decision. It was equally difficult finding someone who wanted to tell us about it on camera. To say that South End residents were angry Thursday night might be an understatement. Some were unconsolable, others infuriated.
I'm not surprised because that type of anger and resentment was already there even beforehand.
Common Council member Lester Freeman is determined to be a peacemaker as a dialogue between the South End community and police continues into the future. Are you surprised the grand jury came back with a no bill?
I'm not surprised. I'm going to be honest. I'm not surprised, but it was a 3-month investigation. It was done by an independent grand jury, so I can go with that if it seems like everything is above board.
Are you convinced that the grand jury came back with the correct decision?
I am, and I'm not going to second guess anyone in this. It has to go through the process.
Dan Levy, News Channel 13 Today.
The case that's generated not only a lot of attention, but strong feelings across the nation. The special prosecutor in the Trayvon Martin case announcing this evening that the man who shot the teen is being charged with second-degree murder. George Zimmerman will be arraigned tomorrow. ABC's TJ Winnie begins our team coverage from Sanford, Florida.
Under the tightest of security, George Zimmerman arrived at the Seminole County Jail Wednesday night, where he will be held before his arraignment tomorrow afternoon.
Because we have an arrest. We have to keep pushing to get a conviction, and after a conviction, we have to certainly continue to push to get a stiff sentence.
Tuesday, Zimmerman's attorneys made an announcement of their own, that they no longer represent him, conducting a concurrent investigation.
If we find evidence of a potential federal criminal civil rights crime, we will take appropriate action, and at every step, the facts and the law will guide us forward.
Many observers were actually expecting a manslaughter charge, but second-degree murder is the customary charge in Florida. When a fight is involved and a gun was used, it carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 25 years behind bars. TJ Winnick, ABC News, Sanford, Florida.
The decision to charge George Zimmerman has local activists speaking out. Albany Law School held an event tonight regarding racial profiling in light of this case. News 10's Amy Cutler is live there now with more on what organizers are hoping to accomplish. Amy?
Hi, Lydia. The big draw of this event was the president and CEO of the NAACP, Ben Jealous, and organizers say what they're hoping to accomplish here is to get a conversation started, one that can finally put an end to racial profiling and make the streets of this country safer for all teens. As the Trayvon Martin case continues to capture the nation's attention, dozens of students, professors, social activists, and more gathered at Albany Law School to hear from the NAACP president and CEO, Ben Jealous, about what the death of the 17-year-old says about racial profiling.
It struck a chord in our community, in other words, that runs deeper maybe than at any point before, because old lines have broken down more than they have before.
Resonated across the country because this case seemed to show very clearly that our criminal justice system is not colorblind.
Alice Green, founder of the Center for Law and Justice, attended the lecture and also helped organize Hoodies in the Hood, a local protest similar to the dozens more held across the country that demanded Martin's shooter, neighborhood watch captain George Zimmerman, be charged.
The outcry was so loud and so demanding that someone had to pay attention.
Stefan Short, president of the Black Law Students Association, sees this case as a defining moment for our country.
We can use Trayvon as a teaching moment to further the discourse around racial profiling and to really hopefully get some legislative action on it.
Back in the lecture, Jealous describes how ending racial profiling is possible.
We have known it's a problem for a long time. We know what the fix is. It is as simple and it is as complex as waking up tomorrow and saying we're not going to do it anymore.
Now, local activists stress this is not about jail time for Zimmerman. Rather, it's about ensuring that he receives a fair trial so that justice can finally be served. We're live here at Albany Law School tonight. Amy Cutler, News 10.
It's all next on WMHT. Urban Plan.
Those that do have a plan and that it's successful.